Bubba from what Bubba knows.
I love, finally, not being the only one in the crowd with a gun. Everybody say, freedom! Freedom! That'll look good. There's a lot of things that need to be said today, and I assume that with the lineup of speakers our organizer put together, most of those things will be said, maybe more than once. So I'm not going to take up much of your time. I only have a couple of things to say. But it'll be enough to get me in trouble with my wife, but that's her fault for letting me up here without a shot collar. Yeah. I need to start by addressing two particular groups of people that I think are present here today. The first group are the reporters, the journalists, and photographers of the mainstream media. Your industry, your business, is one of a kind. You enjoy the protection of the Constitution. Your job and your ability to perform it are mentioned in the very First Amendment in the Bill of Rights. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press. With that constitutional protection comes grave responsibility and duty, both of which you have failed miserably to fulfill. In the last year and a half, I knocked it off. In the last year and a half, the press and journalists in general have spent much time and energy complaining about and attacking conservative talk radio, right-wing bloggers, and Tea Partiers. Your animosity toward these groups is unfounded because they are simply filling a void. In your headlong support of the socialist agendas, you have become nothing more than the press corpse of the Democrat Party. Your inability and or refusal to report news and facts in an unbiased manner, your dereliction of constitutional duty has created that void, a vacuum that had to be filled. Now, I dare you to report that I used the words press corpse. I double dog dare you. I have a question for the media today, and it's this: are you nuts? Look around you. You're surrounded by heavily armed right-wing extremists. Locked and loaded. Do your editors know that you have willingly and knowingly entered into an area with a high concentration of armed, racist, redneck, gunslinger wannabes? Because according to the so-called conventional wisdom and the blowhards of the mainstream media, all of us are gun nuts. We're mentally unstable and looking for an excuse to kill somebody. It is generally accepted opinion of liberals, like your editors, that given the number of people and guns concentrated in this small area, a gunfight is due to occur within moments. So unless you're well armed as well, you should probably leave. But if you insist on staying, keep your eye on that guy, and especially that woman right there. They have crazy eyes, and they've been known to quote Josie Wales. The second group of people that I want to address, and I think they're probably here, is the agents and employees of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, knives, slingshots, pea shooters, and rocks not suitable for skipping. ATF for short. I have the utmost respect for law enforcement, and I understand that you want to be a cop. You want to protect and serve. That is exactly what you should do, get a job in law enforcement. You currently work for a bureaucracy of tax collectors who've assumed the responsibility and the authority to create laws, rules, regulations, and policies without the input of the elected officials and without the input of the people. Your bureau has also assumed the authority to arm itself to enforce the laws they fabricate and change at will. Now, to the rest of you, I want to say thank you. I gotta quit that. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for keeping and bearing arms. Thank you for fulfilling that, your constitutional responsibility. But I ask you not to let it be just today that you do so. Arm yourself tomorrow as well, and every day. We Americans have become too tolerant and too accommodating of the sensitivities of others, especially when those sensitivities are detrimental to our liberty and independence. The general attitude towards an armed citizen by the general public is one of shock and dismay. It's born of ignorance, and that's our fault. That attitude is going to change because patriots across this nation are waking to the realization that rights not exercised will atrophy. The right to keep and bear arms is more than just a right. It is a duty. It is a responsibility. It's not enough to simply just keep arms. We must also bear them. Americans have always kept arms, but we have become derelict in our duty to bear them. I had originally planned to carry a rifle as well as my pistol today, but instead I decided to come here armed to the same extent that I was yesterday in the supermarket and last week at the jewelry store, and the same extent that I will be tomorrow at the gas pump. Because I wear the same pistol today that I wear every day, everywhere. I do this not because I am afraid of others and not because I'm hoping to kill someone. I do it because it is my duty. I ask you to make a solemn resolution to bear your arms every day, in public, everywhere you go. In the late 1700s, the course of human events changed abruptly. Throughout the history of mankind, all men had lived under the reign of a king or an emperor, monarch, or some similar form of totalitarian governor. All the nations of the world were ruled by kings, except for Switzerland. In 1775, King George sent his red-coated armies to the American colonies to enforce new anti-gun laws. The soldiers ordered the colonists to surrender their weapons. In Lexington, a small band of farmers decided that the British would not take their guns, but they freely gave them the bullets. For the first time ever in the history of mankind, farmers, merchants, smiths, doctors, and lawyers not only took on the largest, most powerful, best equipped army in the entire world, they whipped that army and sent them back across the Atlantic to tell King George to go mind his own business. Then they did something that was radically novel. They wrote a constitution and established a brand new nation that would be governed not by a king, but by the people. They later added some amendments to that constitution. The second one established yet another totally new concept, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. The men who designed and wrote the Constitution had just finished fighting a war to secure their new nation. They understood that there was one big reason they successfully fought the mightiest army in the world. They had guns. They also understood that there were no words that could be written on a piece of parchment that would prevent the government of their new republic from becoming tyrannical. They understood that the only thing to prevent tyranny was the same thing that had just defeated tyranny, an armed people. The right to keep and bear arms is our most important right. Thomas Jefferson said, "No free man shall ever be debarred the use of arms." He also said, "The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny and government." The federal government, established by we the people, to serve we the people, are bound only by the Constitution. Only the government has the ability to destroy the Constitution. Only we the people have the ability to preserve the Constitution. The Second Amendment is not about guns. It's not about self-defense or hunting or sports. The Second Amendment is simply the founders' guarantee of the Constitution itself. It is the Constitution's self-defense against tyrants that would disregard and destroy it. The Second Amendment was put in place to provide the means for we, the people, to preserve our Constitution and thereby our republic. Therefore, since only the government can destroy the Constitution and only we can protect it, it is our solemn duty and responsibility to be willing, prepared, and properly armed to do so. I have a question. What is the most important part of the Second Amendment? It reads, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What's the most important part of that? Is it the regulated militia? Is it the words right of the people? Is it the words shall not be infringed? Actually, the most important part of the Second Amendment is the period at the end of the sentence. Shall not be infringed, period. When they wrote that, they placed that period and they were done with it. They started with the Third Amendment. They did not have any ifs, ands, or buts to add. There were no conditions and no exceptions. The men who wrote our Constitution did not waste time with needless words. They said what they meant, they placed periods, and they moved on. Every word in the Constitution was carefully debated. So there was no intent that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, except in California, Massachusetts, Chicago, or Washington, D.C. They didn't leave room for interpretations like shall not be infringed as long as the barrel is 18 inches. They did not leave room for shall not be infringed as long as you don't carry concealed without the permission of the government. There's only one way to interpret the Second Amendment. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, period! I'm done. I'll close by answering one question. In the last couple of years, I've heard many people ask this question. If we could bring back the Founding Fathers to see the state of our republic, what would they do? I think I know the answer to that. Assuming that we brought them back yesterday, today, right now, half of them are just now in the final stages of a complete purge of Congress. The other half are currently battering down the doors of the White House using the remnants of the White House fence. Don't laugh and don't cheer, because tomorrow they're coming back here to kick our lazy, complacent, apathetic asses for letting affairs get to this sorry state and current level of stupidity. Thank you.
Well, Bubba knows.